Joining us now to discuss all of this is Texas State Senator Rodney Ellis, from Springfield, Illinois, Governor George Ryan, and from Houston, Texas, Dudley Sharp, who is the Director of Death Penalty Resources of Justice for All, a victims' rights group. Gentlemen, welcome. Well,
thank you.
Senator Ellis, you actually had to give the order because the governor and lieutenant governor were out of the state.
That's correct.
Did you do it simply because Governor Bush said you should do it?
No, I made the decision about 4 or 5 days before the execution was scheduled that there were enough problems in this case that would warrant a 30-day reprieve. I contacted the governor's office, let them know what my thought process was, and then waited until they made a final decision. But I would not have agreed to execute Mr. McGinn. Now, I must say it, I'm for the death penalty. Mr. McGinn certainly is not the poster child for criminal justice reforms. I mean, he has been a bad actor. But even people who've had a criminal record or problems in the past deserve the fairness in our system. I think the trial court's opinion persuaded me more than anything for a very conservative trial court judge in a very conservative state in a rural county to rule that the DNA evidence ought to be given. Clearly was a strong signal to me that in Texas, at least we ought to be fair enough about the death penalty to let justice work its course.
Governor Ryan, you're also for the death penalty, and yet last January you instituted a moratorium in Illinois, saying you were not certain that you wanted to continue to execute people until it had been reviewed. What kind of review have you got underway?
Well, our system, first of all, was broken and still is to some degree. We had 33 people that went to death row that were represented by attorneys that had either been disbarred or suspended from the practice of law. We had 35 people, African Americans, convicted by an all-white jury, and we had 46 people that went to death row as a result of testimony from jailhouse informants. And so our system needed to be fixed. We had 25 people that were on death row. 13 were found innocent and not guilty as a result of further hearings and testings. So we needed to have a review of our system. I asked former United States Senator Paul Simon to head up a commission with former federal Judge Frank McGarr, Scott Turow. We've asked several prominent both prosecutors and defenders to be a part of the system, along with William Webster, who is an advisor to the commission. So when that commission comes back and tells me that our system is fixed, then we'll resume the death penalty. But until that time, there'll be no more deaths in Illinois as long as I'm governor, until we have a determination that the system works.
Dudley Sharp, you are not convinced, as others are, that a lot of innocent people are being executed. Why not?
Well, as a matter of fact, no one has said that innocent people have been executed, and there's no proof that they have been since 1900. What the current debate is about is how safe are we being in the death penalty system, and even according to anti-death penalty sources, 99.5% of death sentences in the United States since 1973 have been for guilty people, and the 1/2%, those cases have been overturned on appeal.
Statistics from a Newsweek poll just out this weekend about how Americans feel. 73% of Americans favor some death penalty in some cases, a few of them in all cases, some of them for some cases. 19% oppose. But look at this one. At least somewhat confident that those sentenced are guilty. Somewhat confident, 72%. Not confident that those sentenced to death are guilty, 20% of Americans. What does it tell you, Senator Ellis?
Well, clearly, someone who's innocent, if they're no longer with us, have a difficult time proving their case. I think that there are probably some cases in Texas in which someone who was innocent may have been executed. I can't prove that, but clearly, if the state is exercising the power to take away someone's life, would have all of the checks and balances in place, and I don't think we have that in my state.
Governor Ryan, do you agree with the statement that no one who's been executed has subsequently been proved to have been innocent?
Well, I don't know the national statistics on that, but I do know that we had a problem in Illinois, and I want to make sure that we don't put an innocent person to death. And 99.5% isn't good enough for me in Illinois, I can tell you that. We need to have 100% accuracy, or I don't want any part of the system.
And Senator Ellis, you have a bill that you've introduced in Texas to keep retarded people from being executed, regardless of their guilt.
Yeah, I think if someone's mentally retarded, we ought not execute them. Now, if one comes up on my watch while I'm acting governor, I'll obey the laws of the state of Texas. But I did get a bill out of the Senate in the last session in Texas to say we ought to not execute mentally retarded people. I also think we ought to improve the indigent defense system. I think it's a joke not just in my state, but in most states around the country. I think to a great extent in Texas and around the country, people's innocence is determined by their income. And that's just not right.
I want to ask all three of you about a Texas case, beginning with you, Senator Ellis, the case of Calvin Burdeen. He was convicted. He's on death row. And it is incontestable that his lawyer slept through much of the trial.
That is a national embarrassment.
His lawyer slept through much of the trial, but the Texas Attorney General is arguing in courts that that doesn't matter.
Yeah, not only that, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals ruled apparently that you can be Rip Van Winkle and still be a pretty good attorney. I mean, it's an embarrassment. In a lot of ways, I think too many people, for some reason, mistake compassion for a sign of weakness. You can be strong on law and order, you can be for the death penalty, but also believe that the system ought to be fair.
Mr. Sharp, thank you very much.
Thank you.
State Senator Rodney Ellis, thank you. And Governor Ryan from Illinois, I appreciate all three of you arguing this morning with us.
Thank you.